Okay, I think we're live. Hi, everybody. Thank you, first of all, for joining us here at OnPoint Mentors, Ask a Mentor Facebook group. We really appreciate you showing up today. We understand your time is valuable, so thank you. OnPoint Mentors, first of all, is if you're a coach or you're a consultant, OnPoint Mentors is a place where consultants and coaches can come. It's a one-stop full-service solution where we basically help consultants start and grow their businesses immediately, no tech required. If you are a person looking for a coach or mentor, OnPoint Mentors is the place to find some of the world's best mentors. So if you're looking for someone in a specific area, please check out our website at onpointmentors.com. Today, we have a very special guest. I want to introduce you to Kellie Stewart.
Hello.
Kellie comes to us all the way from Australia, so thank you. I think it's, what time is it in the morning for you now?
It's 9 a.m. here.
Okay, so not too early.
Yeah. So you've got sunlight, I've got sunlight. So we both have, well, it's raining here at the moment, but.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
You're in winter now, right? Or
yes, I'm in winter down here, but I wouldn't call where I am at the moment actually wintry, like compared to where you guys are there in Colorado.
That's right. That's right. Well, I just wanted to introduce you. Kellie is someone that you just can't, there's not one label for Kellie, right? So I'm just going to read out some of the things. She is a consultant, an entrepreneur, a human potentialist, which I'm sure you'll explain that, a business strategist, and a researcher of human and animal behavior. In saying all of that, now, Kellie is, or she calls herself an equinologist, which I'll let her explain that as well. But most recently, what I really wanted to emphasize is that Kellie has most recently developed some really in-depth, amazing programs for our veterans with PTSD, which is why I asked her to talk on this topic of anxiety and stress, because I think she's the perfect person to cover that, because she knows it so well. Just as a disclaimer, first of all, OnPoint Mentors is a coaching platform. Some of the topics we'll be tackling tonight and other Wednesdays or Thursdays, depending on where you are in the world, in the future are used for educational purposes only, where we should not be construed as medical advice or therapeutic advice or treatment. That's my disclaimer. So to begin, Kellie, during this crazy time that we're going through in this world for a number of reasons, I've heard a lot of mentors say they've seen an increase in the number of clients coming in to deal with their emotions and their stress and their anxiety. Do you find the same thing happening in your practice, and how do you help your clients through some of their issues?
First of all, yes, absolutely. Like there's been an influx this week, actually. It's been quite busy with people tapping in and calling in or emailing with emotional and stressful issues relating to, our current global crisis as such.
That's right.
Well, and if that's not going to bring stress to anyone, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
But, thanks for having me on too. And, I just love the premise of what OnPoint Mentors is actually going to bring forth to humanity to be able to assist people in their growth, right?
Right.
So I think it's just a fantastic model that you've created. So thank you for that.
No, thank you for coming on board. Really appreciate good mentors coming to teach our group.
You're so welcome. You are so welcome. Yeah, so let's talk about stress and anxiety. What I want to really bring forth about this is looking at stress and anxiety really are just labels, and stress and anxiety are really just emotions, right? So, but we tend to actually want to give it a label, like I'm feeling stressed or I'm feeling anxious. So they are two separate things, but in really the makeup of it is that it's just an emotional reaction or response to something that you're actually perceiving is happening to you or happening for you, right?
Right.
Yeah. And it's absolutely normal for people to experience stress. Stress has its purpose, and when we can actually start to actually look at it from a different way of seeing things or thinking, then what we can do is have some sense of governance over what's occurring in our life.
Okay.
But I'll go into a little bit more about that later. But really, with the global pandemic that's happening, we're seeing a lot of people that have lost their jobs. Right. That, you know, one of the biggest things that I'm finding that my clients are coming to me is for relationship stress. You know, because the very thing that they value the most in their relationships is being challenged the most too as well. So there's a lot of conflict that's actually occurring, which then creates a lot of you know, uncertainty in relationships. You know, I had a couple last week that were just about ready to tear each other's throats out because, you know, one had work and one didn't have work. So there was this polarity that was occurring. Right. And bringing them back to a place of center where they can communicate to each other to be able to really express what's important to them is a very important component of dealing with stress and anxiety, is to be able to fully be conscious to what your emotions are trying to reveal to you, as opposed to suppressing them and feeling guilt and shame around them. Because once we step into that realm of guilt and shame, then we get a second feedback mechanism of stress-related emotions that come on board. Right. And then that's when we step into illness and disease starts to occur in our body.
So let's just step it backwards a little bit. What do you mean by communicate? I know, you know, in general, communication is important for a relationship, but be more specific. What does that mean? You have to be aware of your emotions and learning how to communicate with your partner. Like, how do you advise your clients on that?
The first thing is to really give space to being heard, right? And allow the other person to actually speak freely about what they're actually feeling or perceiving in the moment, right? Without a form of judgment and without a form of being able to having to change their perception or their perspective, but to really listen and allow them to express what is actually occurring for them, right? Because what I find is that a lot of people, they want to actually project in, you know, well, you should do this or you should do that. But allowing a person to actually express freely actually releases a form of suppression inside the person. But if a person cannot feel like they can actually express freely, that becomes repression. And then that's where we start. The actual feedback mechanism of stress actually does occur.
Right. So if someone says to their partner, I'm concerned about our financial status with COVID, and then is it simply just by saying I am concerned about it that makes the relationship go a little smoother, or?
Sometimes. Sometimes the other person just wants to put their head in the sand and say, well, you know, like, I'll just preempt something. I am Australian. I do swear a little bit, you know, so I'll apologise for that in advance. If it offends anybody, it's not meant to. I like to speak freely in terms of my expression too as well. But, you know, yeah, I'm seeing that there's these polarities that are actually occurring within relationships between couples, in financial stress. And then there's these expectations that are actually projected upon each other for somebody to be able to do something to relieve that stress, right? So really, people only experience like changes or emotions to stimulate a sense of safety, right, or fantasy, right? So we're actually striving to actually feel safe, or we're striving to actually achieve something, right? Okay. And both of them have an element of safety and certainty attached to them, but it comes in many forms, right? Like infatuated, like we might be infatuated with an outcome or a partner that we expect them to be a certain way, or gaining a reward in building a business, or, you know, having a job, and all these particular things.
Is that what you call the fantasy of what they? Okay.
Yeah. So it's being conscious to what the fantasy actually is, and bringing that into a greater sense of awareness of how far out they are, right? Right. And so there is also a fear of the loss of that. And what most people are looking for is actually supporting their fantasy, right?
Right. Right. It should be this way. We should be able to go out to restaurants. We should be back at our jobs.
Yeah, we should. So that's a projection that it should be this certain way, because we've been conditioned that that's what we could do. We have been doing that the majority of our lives. Like, I don't remember any time in my life, apart from being injured where I was locked up on the couch or something with a broken leg, that I couldn't go out, you know. But it's, you know, having this forced projection or the perception of that upon us, that we cannot live our lives the way that we used to, right? And so now that is basically a nightmare to most people. And so what most people are actually seeking is to have that nightmare turned off and go back into the fantasy, right? Which gives them the perception of safety. And in the perception of safety is where we think that we can have a sense of calmness, etc., right? But there's also drawbacks or disservices to actually consistently being in that state and not being able to adapt. So the purpose of stress is to give you a feedback to let you know that you're not actually adapting to an ever-changing environment, right? And so when we can bring that conscious to what we're actually feeling, and we do label it stress or anxiety, then if we can have the awareness to actually say, okay, what am I not adapting to? And now this leads into where we talk about axiology or people's intrinsic value systems, is understanding what that is for each individual person, and getting really clear on what's important to that person, what their axiology is and what their intrinsic drivers are.
Okay, you're going to have to explain axiology.
Okay, just got a few questions coming in here. Freedom to express, yes, exactly. Oh, those shoulds, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so if I flick back over to, because there is people popping in here now, right? So, I'll go into that a little more, like we look at like value systems and how each person has an individual set of values. But really the purpose, if we look at evolution is consistent throughout time and space. Like that, we know that dinosaurs no longer actually live here because they couldn't actually evolve and adapt to an ever-changing environment. So stress is actually giving us feedback to that. Now, whatever COVID has actually created for us, it is our responsibility and our accountability to ourselves to be able to adapt to that, because we don't have, as individuals, the ability to be able to change like the greater construct of what's actually occurring. So wisdom is to be consciously able to look at the adaptation process that is available to us in any given moment, to be able to bring ourselves back to a state of safety in the center, not safety in the polarity, right?
Okay.
So the one of the stories that I love to actually share about this, there 3 years ago, like I was in Kenya and I had the opportunity to research and study a lot of in-depth animal behavior. And this is where I do love to actually teach animal behavior too as well, because intrinsically inside of each one of us as a human, we're actually operating from that place, right? From our limbic system, we have the same level of consciousness to most animals, which is where most of our emotions are actually driven from. So I spend a lot of time in Africa actually looking at different animals like predator-prey behavior, etc. But what I did have the opportunity to do while I was there in Laikipia at Old Petcheta Conservancy was to actually spend time with the last northern white rhino on Earth. Wow. Yeah, so the last male northern white rhino on Earth. So he was on the verge of being extinct because he was unable to adapt to an ever-changing environment, right? So in my research to that, and in the wisdom that he actually brought forth, was actually really kind of cool, because the northern white rhinos are actually really known for being quite placid. And, you know, let's just say they are like placid and kind and, let's just say, obedient to certain things, right? But looking at the environment and the changes that were actually happening around, you know, with the poachers coming in and the land being used, becoming diminished, they were unable to adapt in their immediate expression to be able to stay as a species. So, you know, they were the poachers. They wouldn't run away. They would just say hi, you know, that kind of thing. So the inability to be able to adapt actually causes extinction in species, and that's been demonstrated throughout time and space. Now, interestingly, while I was there too, is that we look at the black rhinos, right? They have actually adapted to be able to fit that environment. They were almost the polarity of the northern white rhino.
Right.
I would go out and see them, and you could not get within 50 to 60 meters of them, and they'd be like, and then little tail go up, and then they would be gone out of sight. So they had adapted to be able to adjust to fit an ever-changing environment, to know the distance where poachers would actually come in that would have a threat. They also had adapted their senses to be able to pick up consciously of when there was a threat and when there wasn't, to be able to keep themselves at a safe distance.
Right.
So the black rhino is actually flourishing, you know, in Kenya. So I like to bring that to people's awareness is in this changing time, it is about how you can actually tap into the adaptation process. Like, what do you need to do to be able to pivot and adapt to what is actually happening in the world right now? And, you know, and refrain from the blame game.
Okay, so how do you suggest humans adapt and pivot to what's going on in today's world?
Okay, so the first thing is, and this is also going to link back to how it will help you overcome the feelings of stress and anxiety too as well.
Right.
And this is also linked to a lot of the work that we've been doing with the veterans as well. Because we find with the veterans is that when they come out of active duty, that they're no longer in their environment that they once knew, but they have the inability to be able to adapt to the environment that they have to go into. So they live in the thought of the past, of how it should be. But they have giving them the understanding of how that they can actually change their perceptions to be able to pivot and adapt to today's ever-changing environment. So, you know, this is, and the first step is for people is to identify their actual intrinsic drivers and their values.
Okay.
So what's most important to you as a person, and what is your actual why that you're actually here doing what it is that you love to do. So for example, I was in the States 3 months ago, but had to leave America, and I was actively, you know, really getting into this work, but I had to leave. And the stress and anxiety on coming to that, but, you know, I thought, well, I can go into my cave and, you know, complain, whinge and cry about it. Or, you know, which I do actually recommend people, like, give yourself to have that time for expression, because it does actually help regulate your nervous system. But there's a time where you want to refrain from the polarity, and if you start to actually step over into other aspects of trying to self-medicate, etc., then, you know, it's time to actually, like, step back into your perceptions and adjust and adapt. Anyway, so I started to ask the questions. Okay, so this stress is really a feedback mechanism to let me know that I'm out of alignment with my values and purpose. So let's go back and look at that. Let's go back and look at the questions that I can actually ask, like what's most important to me? What's most important to my why? And then how can I create an alignment with what is my purpose and my why and my intrinsic values? And when you step into that state, we start to actually activate what we call eustress, which is good stress, right? Because stress is service to be able to have you to adapt and change. And without that, we don't actually grow as a person. So this is where our potential starts to actually step up, and we start to up-level ourselves. So each person has the ability to be able to overcome the roadblock that they have put in front of themselves, which is their perspective or their perception, right? So you want to look at what it is that's most important to you in your life. And that's by asking a certain number of questions and really diving deep into that and being conscious to what it is. And then the second part is to really challenge your beliefs. Really start to ask yourself like quality questions and challenging your beliefs in what is actually happening for you and how you can actually make the change, right? So I'm actually hearing a lot of people in my clients is that, you know, like, this is not my fault. What am I going to do?
Right.
How is this, you know, the government's imposed this on me. I can't fly here. I can't go here. But to stay in that, you're actually really cycling the trauma and the stress back throughout your body. And what we call being stuck, like being stuck in a bottleneck or stuck in some places like victimhood. So really, when you hear yourself actually speaking to that or saying that, it's like, stop the narrative, challenge the belief systems, and just ask the question, is it true? Is that actually true? And do I have the ability to be able to change my perception right now? You know, and that is a definite yes, you do. Every human being on this planet has the ability to be able to adapt to changing their perception, to see things in a different way. But it's also having the awareness that when you are in that, you know, I call it the spin cycle.
Right.
The spin cycle.
We all know where that is. Been there, done that.
Yeah. When you're in the spin cycle, you're actually like myelinating your amygdala or your limbic system, and you're really operating from, you know, like that animal emotional reaction based thought system. But when we can stop and be present to the feeling that we're feeling that and have that awareness and put a little bit of space and time in between going consciously into the next decision-making process, is we actually open up our executive center in our brain, or our prefrontal cortex, which gives us the ability to be able to have visions, to be able to dream, to imagine, without fantasy, of course, but to actually look at what is possible, right? So that is what I mean by challenging your belief systems. You're actually challenging the actual deep part of the animal nature within you to be able to step up into the prefrontal cortex and the consciousness to look at what is possible.
So what's an example of a question while we're in that spin cycle that we can ask ourselves to stop the spin, turn off the thing, to reset? Do you have some examples of questions that we can, you know, step back, look at a broader picture, say, okay, I'm aware of the emotion I'm having, and I'm aware that I'm able to change. So what do I ask myself?
The thing is it is about, am I being present in the moment, and what am I actually feeling? Like tapping in and connecting to the energy of the expression of that emotion that you're actually feeling. That'll bring you back into your body, as opposed to you being disassociated out here just reacting like an automaton. But it'll bring you back into your body and connect you back to you know, the feeling essence of you, because that is the first form of feedback, is your physiology.
Right.
You can be present to that and say, okay, stop. What am I actually feeling right now? And what is my belief or perception of that? and then allow the space and time, for the wisdom of the answer to actually come to you instead of flying off the handle, reacting. Yeah, we've all done that, that's for sure. And I mean, that's beneficial, like not judging that at all, but it's going beyond that. If it starts to get out of hand, then starting to really tap into that. And we know that there is an increased number of suicides that are actually happening at the moment because of the level of depression that is actually occurring, because people are not able to actually see any way forward. And I'm getting messages here. I'm encouraging people to really tap in and challenge their belief systems, like in that moment. And if you are struggling with understanding what those feelings and what those emotions are like, please reach out to us so that we can really give you some assistance in that.
Right. So, a lot of people talk about gratitude, or so they're the things you read when you're reading these blogs about how to deal with the stress. They say exercise, eat well, nutrition, breathe, practice gratitude. I had a question that came up. One of my clients said, "How do you practice gratitude?" Right?
Yes, I think practicing gratitude is a beautiful sentiment to do that. But there's a few steps before you get to that gratitude stage, right?
Right.
It's not going to actively go, well, I'm just going to practice gratitude, right? Gratitude's got to come to me, right? Yeah, bullshit. Again, it is about there is a step-by-step process to be able to get a person to a state of gratitude, love and gratitude for what is, by asking quality questions, but being present to what is actually occurring for you and challenging those belief systems, and unsticking the roadblocks that are in the way. And that is that is to change your perception of those particular things.
Right.
And that's what I love, the work that we utilize with the DeMartini method, is being able to use those quality questions to bring yourself back to a state of equanimity where gratitude is actually birthed, right?
Right.
So I'm an avid meditator myself, and I've dabbled in the research of, can I get to gratitude with just simple meditation? Yes, you can, but it's still, to be able to take your potential and raise your consciousness to another level through meditation does require practice, to be able to challenge your belief systems and to challenge the narrative that's actually running in your head, and the perspective that's actually going on, to have governance over that. But what's happening in that moment is that we're actually having a conversation with the limbic system in our mind. It's like we're having a conversation with the animal mind that's going, hey, what about me? What about me? It's like, in essence, we're trading that to sit down and stay.
Stay.
Yeah. So this is what I love about the work that I have done with horses and animals, and the research in that, because it is really working with the animal nature within us.
Go into that a little bit more, because I said in the beginning you call yourself an equinologist. Explain to everybody what that is, and how do you transfer some of what you learned from animal behavior into how you can learn what's going on in the human behavior side.
Cool. Love to.
That's fascinating. No, I've had this conversation with you many times. So
yeah, I mean, calling myself an equinologist, like, a lot of my life was actually training and researching and teaching with horses.
Right.
And going full on into the training component, where we would just take the horses and train them, right? And we would get multiple different problem horses that would actually come to us that were labeled like, you're the last resort, otherwise you get your head chopped off, right? So and what I started to notice is that when I was working with them with their intrinsic value systems and being able to communicate to them in a way that they live their life, they would come online and they come back to a state of equanimity or balance like pretty quick. And the training process became quite simple. But then when the horses would actually go back to the clients or the people who own them, there was like this reversion rate that was actually occurring. Between 4 and 6 weeks. The horses would be back with a similar state of being, right? So so I started to actually look at these different patterns that were actually occurring and what the humans were actually not expressing, what they were actually repressing, the horses were starting to express. And I found that really super interesting, really super interesting. So I delved deeper into that, full-on research into that, and unearthed really that the horses are like let's just say, a hologram or a reflection of the life, the unconscious life that's happening within a person. So pretty soon, I thought, well, I'm going to have to start learning about human behavior and humans if I really want to make a change with horses. So that started me on my journey to be able to step into understanding and researching the depths of human behavior. But I found it really so interesting how the majority of the people during my research were unable to actually have governance or be able to challenge their belief systems that were actually happening inside them, because we're so driven towards being emotional beings and really in that feeling that we're actually run by those particular things, right? Now, horses and animals who are different levels of consciousness, that's all they can live by because they don't have the prefrontal cortex that we do, so their consciousness is different. So, but what they become is the mirrors to the life inside the person that they're not actually expressing. So I found that beautiful. So jump forward, I have now created a program called Equine Metanoia, which I actually take into people come, and we also go into corporates to be able to take leadership so that we can see the hidden behavior.
Okay.
We can see the hidden behavior because the horses are non-biased feedback mechanisms to that stress and anxiety, or all the other emotions inside a person. And then by utilizing the questions that we have to be able to bring back to a state of equanimity, we integrate. We integrate the life inside the person, and then the horse changes. It comes online as being completely balanced as well. So there's a fair exchange that's happening within that.
Right.
It's not the traditional form of equine therapy where you go and you dump your shit onto a horse, like when you go to a psychologist, you do the same thing. But actively, you're actually integrating. So there's a fair exchange process that starts to occur. But the horse gives you non-biased feedback. Right. So I'm actually developing coaches in this area to become anequinologists to actually be able to help people with that, because this is the beautiful sentiment of animals. If we're actually conscious to the feedback that they are giving us, even your dogs, that they are letting you know your imbalances in your belief systems as well, and the projection and the injections that are actually occurring.
Can you give a specific example of how you use this? And you said leadership training, and I just want to know, like, what happened? Just set the scene. Tell us a story of an example.
Okay, so I was practicing this with quite a fair few people in Mexico, and I had a musician, let's just say a musician, come in. And he had never been around horses. So this works for, it doesn't matter, you don't have to be a horse person, right? And he came in, and he's pretty like mellow, like music. He's probably smoked a bit of weed. He's pretty mellow, and so I got 2 particular horses for him on that day. I kind of felt that he needed 2 horses because there was a component within him that he was repressing and then outwardly expressing. So within 10 minutes of him being in the round pen situation, there was a mare in there, a black mare, and he stood in the middle, and this mare just laid down in front of him, right? Just laid down completely. And anybody who knows horses, they just don't do that into
Yes.
self-preservation, right? That's the last port of call that they actually
Right.
do. So she laid down, and I went through the questioning process of, asking him, like, what particularly does this actually mean for you, and pulled out some certain things
Right.
that intuitively, when you're so present and be able to be so present to what is actually occurring, your intuition actually guides you to asking the right questions for this. And so we tapped into that. He was having a relationship issue. Like, he had just stepped into a relationship with a younger woman, and he didn't know how to actively be with her. So it was really, he was questioning, and he had this whole, like, oh, I don't know, like, it was creating stress and anxiety. So, smoke a weed to be able to cover that up. But that within itself, and was able, the horse has laid down, and it was quite amazing actually. And I have video footage of it. The man would just turn around and look at him and say, "Well, come on then." And I was like, "Oh, what?" He didn't know how to actually, like, really connect intimately, and that was really what was stressing him. So that was the repression that she was expressing.
She was expressing, right?
Yeah. So anyway, went through the whole process of that.
But that was the one horse.
Yeah.
What was the other horse doing?
The other horse was like way over in the corner, right? Totally just hanging out. And the interesting part with this, it was so fascinating, is that when he'd gone through this process, and by me asking the quality questions to bring into integration, then the mare got up and actually, like, they had this honoring process, which we could say is a sentiment of gratitude for each other.
Right.
And so the fair exchange had occurred in the moment. And so the sentiment of balance, love, and gratitude occurred between horse and man.
Right.
But then the next repression of his actually surfaced, right? And this mare, she ran across the round pen and kicked the shit out of this grey horse, right? And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I guess there's a bit of work to do on the ex-wife." So, so these particular things were, what actually is surfacing. And these are the patterns that I started to notice when anytime a human became in contact or around the horses, that the horses would start to express certain things.
Right.
And going deep into the research work, what is actually happening is that the energy and vibration within inside, because we're all made up of energy and vibration, and our repressions are also a vibrational frequency that these horses who are so sensitive actually read that. They know it, and they act in self-preservation in some form on it. So it's actively entanglement through the morphogenic fields or the L fields. We can go deep into physics on that, but I won't bore you with that.
The next interview, we'll go into that.
Yeah. And so they become the active mirror to that, right? So this is the interesting part, is this happens in relationships too as well, because your partner is expressing your repressions, or your children are expressing your repressions, because that is part of the dynamic of polarity that we're actually playing in the universal construct or universal system. But I won't go into that because I love that subject, and we will end up on a rabbit hole, and I promised you I wouldn't take you down a rabbit hole.
I don't mind going down rabbit holes. We find rabbit holes fascinating.
Yeah. So if we can look at our environment, which includes our partners or the people that we're sharing space with, or animals or whatever, and look at what is the feedback that we're actually getting, and what is the message that's actually in that for us to be able to come back to a state of gratitude or equilibrium. Well, that's where you actually access gratitude, is in a state of balance. And I love the fact that I just got a message from Faye. You can't just practice gratitude. You have to it does require asking quality questions and having an awareness to what is actually occurring in front of you without reacting to it.
Right.
It's like, I call it having, a curious state. It's like, and then taking a moment in between to be able to actively challenge the belief systems of that, and then take action, right?
Right.
So one of the greatest thing that I find that actually holds people in their stress and anxiety and trauma is not actively taking action. And so when you find yourself not actively taking action, you're really in what we call the freeze mode. So which is still an act of self-preservation. So you're still deep within your limbic system. Okay. So it is just about actually stepping up and taking action, right? So you want to ask the question, what is it that you're actually going to do to actually start today to shift and pivot and change the expression so that you can actually adapt to fit the ever-changing environment that we are living in today, right?
Right. Well, that's why, I won't say COVID was the instigator of OnPoint Mentors, but Faye and I had been talking about it. We had our initial conversation back in 2013. She was headed towards, finding solutions for business owners and coaches. I was more into the life and coaches and facilitators and trying to find a platform for them. And we were actually seriously talking about putting this platform together last summer. And then, life is busy and we're doing it in piecemeal. Finally, COVID hit and we're like, boom, let's just get it out. Whatever form it is right now, we know what our vision is. We know where we want to take it. Let's just start it now so that a lot of our mentors that we have who have a lot to share, such as yourself, can get out there and really make a difference in this world. So, I appreciate you sharing all those stories, and I always love catching up with you. But let's see, what do some people have to say? We've got quite a few messages here.
Yeah, I was looking at the last one is that planning is also the key to deal with stress. Yeah, absolutely. Like, part of the taking action process is getting clear and understanding who we really are.
Right.
And starting with that, like really defining your values and your intrinsic core drivers.
Right.
And then off that, we then derive what our why is, right?
Right.
Some of the greatest companies that have survived, they're the ones that actually really know what their why is, not the what that they do, but they come from that why, right? And then they reverse engineer back to what it is and how they are actually going to deliver that why. So you could say that that's part of the strategic planning process is reverse engineering back from your why. So, but your axiology actually drives your teleology. So your axiology is your values, and your teleology is like your end purpose or your why. Why? What are you here for? Like, why? What are you doing? The things that you would love to do.
Right. Right. And can I ask you, Kellie, what is your why?
My why is to actually up-level and raise consciousness of humanity on the planet so that they can adapt and live fulfilling lives.
Wow, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Linda says, I would imagine practicing gratitude is difficult to people who are actively in the midst of COVID crisis, like a family illness or death, loss of income. What would be a good practice someone could use immediately to decompress the heightened emotional states?
Okay, so like immediately to be able to decompress, we want to look at like there's two parts of that. We could really just go into a breathing component, which is to bring you back to a state of center so that you can regulate. We call it regulating your central nervous system and regulating the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system is to, take in two short breaths and then 5 long breaths out. When we do that, we're coming back to a state of presence, and we're able then to access that curious state that I talk about. Like I call it the third space, like the space between reaction and response, right? That third space in the middle, coming back to a state of presence to be able to bring online the prefrontal cortex, but really When you're outside the ratio of perception, then you're going to find it difficult to have governance over your emotions. So this is where these beautiful quality questions that we have are going to be able to help people through these heightened emotional states.
Can I just back it up a bit? And you said the ratio of perceptions. Can you explain that a little bit?
So if you want to talk about like perceptions and our belief systems and our emotions are really just energy, right? So by understanding the frequency of those energies that are actually permeating within you, we call them ratios. So, when you get batshit crazy and you're like, oh my God, I can't, I can't cope anymore. Really?
No, I'm never like that. What are you talking about?
Me neither. They're like,
just ask my husband, though. He'll tell you a different answer.
Exactly. So we talk that, the ratios of emotionality and the ratios of perception, or you're extremely depressed and you can't get hold of your tears and you're constantly crying and that kind of thing, or you're extremely elated and you're so happy here all the time. They're all ratios of perception or ratios of the energies of the expression of our consciousness. So we have a ratio sort of graph that we utilize, and it really it goes all the way up to 100. But when we're at 100, we're actually completely disassociated, and what we would label being like completely schizophrenic or completely not within our bodies.
Right.
And there are some people in this world that are there, and then it comes back down the scale of understanding that where we are in the bipolarity, like we could talk about bipolar or depression and things like that. So when we find a person that is generally outside the 7-to-1 ratio, they're starting to lose governance over their actual emotional aspect of their limbic system. So that's a feedback mechanism that like when you're going batshit crazy and you're yelling shit, can you bring yourself back into a state of governance? I mean, your body does have a part of a homeostatic regulation, which is generally crying, or you get tired, like it will bring you back into that. Because so I love the limbic system. It's so fucking conscious within itself that it has the ability to actually bring you back. But if you don't actually listen to it, it's going to go, hey, here, have it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. So that's what I love about it. It's giving you such a wisdom of a message if you listen to it. So
it'll keep repeating in that spin cycle until you learn.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally. And that is it's just letting you know that you're outside of that ratio. It's like, hey, come on, like get back down here and take that third space and like be really present to that, and then challenge that belief system. Is that true? Is that true? What can I do right now to be able to have a shift in my perception? What can I action to be able to have a shift in my perception? Yeah. So.
I actually have met people who have called the virus Saint Corona.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't really like to use that terminology, but what they were saying is that use this challenging, and I say in air quotes, time, because it's a perception, use this time to be productive and creative. Like what Faye and I have done is just, okay, what can we do to bring service to the world? Because if you're serving more than just yourself, you're gonna make something happen, right? So I know quite a few people who have created businesses or done something of service, and that is in itself is great for stress, because you are on point with a mission of getting you where you're supposed to be, and your purpose and your why.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's being present, taking that space to create, right?
Right.
And maybe the world is going through a rebirthing process. It sounds a bit hysterical, woo-woo, but whatever. But maybe it is it's given us that pause, or that the ability to stop, and that's the third space. Now we go into a new creation phase.
Right.
What is required to actually evolve humanity? What is required to evolve communities and nations, etc.? What is required to actually evolve the planet, if you want to go that far?
Right.
And really look at the intrinsic values and the needs of all of those particular things.
Right.
And if you can provide a service to that, then you're not going to become extinct.
Right.
There is so much work available out there right now to be of service to humanity, to be of service to the planet, to be of service to, you know, the universe, whatever. But it's taking that pause to really look at that. And instead of being stuck in what you once were,
right,
we're being asked for an upgrade or an up level in consciousness. You know, I love it. I absolutely love it. As challenging as fuck that it is, that, you know, this is the beauty in the beauty of challenge. You know, like in here is that we all have the ability to actually up level now.
Right.
And honoring it for that. And that's just challenging the beliefs of what we perceived back here, which is our fantasy that life is going to continue to be the same, right? And is that true? Has everything ever been?
Exactly.
Exactly right. You know,
it's evolution. We're evolving.
You don't wear the same clothes every day. You know. It is evolution. It's evolving. It's actually, you know, being able to adapt to change and seeing the beauty that it has to offer.
Fantastic. Well, let's see. Does anyone have any questions out there for Kellie? Let's see what we've had here.
Breathwork is so immediate. Yes, breathwork is immediate. It brings you back to a state of presence and center. And there's a lot of aspects of breathwork that you could go out and really dive into. Like yoga is great for that. And meditation, and then even breathwork journeying is also perfect for that, just to be able to come back to that center state. But I want to add to it is that is a pathway to bringing you in there then to ask the quality questions, to be able to really step yourself into the future or forward. So what is my personal morning routine to set up your day dealing with stress better? Well, one of the things that I love to do where I am right now is that I'm on the beach. So I will go for a walk with a little dog that's here, and I'll walk along the beach. And then one of the things that really works for me, and this is extrinsic, which is outside of me that, you know, helps, is that, you know, I do a smoothie every morning. You know, like I'm regular with that. So my smoothie, and that's it, my smoothie. And while I'm walking, I'm actually doing an active meditation. You know, Aristotle and Nietzsche were famous with this stuff, right? Is that walking actively, when you can be present in walking, so you're present in the body and you're actively actioning movement, you can ideate from that place. And And it's quite amazing what starts to actually flow through.
Right.
And I'm not that overly structured. Like I'm not the kind of person that goes bang, 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 I gotta fill out my calendar and do this, this, and this. I like to have a balance of that, where, you know, I'll schedule consults, and then I like to have, you know, a bit of free time without the rigidity of those particular things. And that's really how I actually set up my personal morning for dealing with stress.
And I know Kellie personally, we've had many conversations, so I know this to be true. She does take advantage of nature quite often. It's interesting, the walking bit. John and I, my husband and I, went to Everest Base Camp, and we took a month off, and we walked to the Everest Base Camp. And we were planning, oh yes, when we take our walk, we're gonna plan our businesses. We're gonna, you know, plan out our lives. We had all this agenda to accomplish, but what we discovered it was a little holiday for the brain, because you just concentrating on where you placed your foot each foot because there was a rock or there was a ledge or there was a yak coming by. So it really erased all thoughts of stress and what's going on in the world, and we were present and try to be present for a whole month walking. Talk about a holiday for the brain, but you're right, that's where ideations were birthed. And actually one of our other OnPoint mentors, Ilse Alberts, who will be speaking with us in a couple of weeks, she came on that trip with us, and this is where a lot of her ideas were birthed, and we'll ask her about that when she speaks to us in a couple of weeks. Let's see.
I think that is such a beautiful sentiment, like being able to tap into nature and being present with it just through walking. And everybody has the opportunity to do that.
Right.
And the innovation and the ideation that occurs from that space is quite beautiful.
Right. Faye Chappell. Faye. My fave, Kelly, walking meditation, great teacher on this, is...
Nick Nat Nan.
Oh, Nick Nat Nan. I'm like, I can't see very well. Teresa Sims, I call it the pause for change.
Yeah, I think it's great. And, you know, we haven't touched on, I just want to bring in before we sort of wrap up, is that one of the greatest things that really activates like stress is uncertainty, right? And being able to be present with uncertainty is one of the hardest things that I find for myself and for most of my clients too, because our mind wants to actually attach to that finiteness of certainty to give us a feeling of safety. And if we go into some Buddhist practices or Vedic practices, then, you know, there's a lot of meditation and wisdom around the art of dealing with uncertainty. And this is just a little segue to what we've actually talked about. I don't really want to go deep into it. Maybe we can have a discussion on it later. But, you know, one of the books that I love is this book, like The Art of Not Knowing. And look how thick it is.
The Book of Not Knowing. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And being present and learning to have love and gratitude for not knowing and not having certainty.
Right.
And that's an interesting space to actually challenge your belief systems from that. It's got some beautiful wisdom within that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kelly. This has been fabulous.
You're welcome.
And thank you everybody out there for you know, hanging in there with us but it was easy because Kelly's topic was just phenomenal in the way she explained it and how she helps her clients. So go check out her profile, Kellie Stewart, on OnPoint Mentors. If you're looking for someone to help you with your stress and anxiety and a whole bunch of other things. She's got it all listed there. She is a mentor in a lot of different topics and realms and issues. So thank you again, Kelly, and we'll see you the next time. Will you please come back?
You so much. I will, definitely will. Love the conversation, and thank you so much for having me on. And thank you again for creating OnPoint Mentors. I think it's going to be a game changer for where we are in the world right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Will do. Bye.